Good morning. On behalf of Engineers Australia, I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's webinar, Building Smarter Capital Projects. My name is Megan Pody and I'll be your host for today. Firstly, in keeping with our custom, Engineers Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders, past and present. I'd like to acknowledge that today's webinar is being hosted with Engineers Australia's industry partner, Contruent. Contruent is the lifecycle cost management solution that empowers owners and engineering construction firms to build complex capital programs and mega projects with precision and speed. Now, today we will feature two speakers, followed by our panel discussion and our audience Q&A. So I encourage you all to please send your questions through to our speakers via the chat box. Don't forget to pop your name in and to also let me know who your question is directed to. Please join me as I welcome our speakers today. Our first speaker is Rob Stockwell. Rob possesses extensive experience in program and project controls, developed through his involvement in large-scale infrastructure and railway projects across the UK and Hong Kong. He is currently engaged with the Mass Transit Railway, MTR, in Hong Kong, one of the most advanced and efficient metro networks in the world. He is the General Manager of the Project Management Office, responsible for program, cost and performance, risk, digital capabilities and reporting, overseeing the project performance and strategic delivery of the capital works projects. His expertise spans the full life cycle of project delivery, from strategic planning and budgeting to execution and closeout. I would also like to welcome our second speaker, Carl Van Tine. Carl's decades of global experience helping customers improve their project control processes and successfully adopt new software systems make him an effective Chief Customer Officer for Contruent. Carl's mega project successes span the globe and multiple industries, including rail and ports, highways, mining, commercial power, and oil and gas. At Contruent, Carl and his team ensure that owner-operators and EPCs are able to achieve their desired business outcomes after successful project implementations. Please join me in welcoming Rob Stockwell and Carl Van Tine.
Okay. Thank you, Megan. So good morning to everybody. My name is Carl Van Tine. I am joining the call from Washington, D.C., so good evening for me, and depending on where you are in the world. I'm going to talk about Contruent a little bit. First, I'll cover Contruent, give you a brief overview of who we are and what we do as a business and how we help contribute to capital projects. Then I'm going to pass it over to Robert Stockwell, who is one of our customers and has graciously agreed to join this call and talk about how he runs a PMO and how he integrates project controls. So let me get going with our software. So we are Contruent. What that means is we're an enterprise lifecycle cost management system. Our mantra is faster to deliver. And there are lots of ways that we live up to that mantra. But first and foremost, we are an out-of-the-box SaaS platform. So we try to make it easy for you to access the system. As an out-of-the-box system, we try to make it easy for you to configure your system and stand it up quickly. Our claim to fame is that we can get you live within 12 to 20 weeks. For most projects and even mega projects, we can do that. So I'll give you a little bit on who we are. We started in the 1990s. Some folks on the call may recognize us as Aries Prism. I have been with the business for a lot of years since we were Aries Prism, and I've had the pleasure of rolling the system out and helping us set up offices around the world for more than 20 years now. In about 4 years ago, we had new investment in our business, and we moved on from being Aries Prism to Contruent. We gained some private equity investment in our business, and with that, we were able to accelerate our roadmap, accelerate our growth, invest heavily in our product, and that's what allowed us to move from an old on-premise system to a SaaS system now. So Contruent stands for Truth in Construction. Our mission: empower decision makers to build our world's infrastructure with precision and speed. What Contruent Enterprise is, and there was a question that we'll get to later during the panel discussion about what software will be shown today, what's the pricing, all of that. This is not meant to be a software demo today. We're going to talk instead about just good project controls. It's not meant to be a detailed dive, but at an overview, what do? We are cost management, and that means everything that touches cost management, whether it's forecasting or change management, measuring field progress, tracking engineering design and progress against the design phase. We have an estimating capability. We do integration, just because integration is such an important part of any project, bringing schedule information in, connecting with financial systems. And we have procurement capability and, of course, analytics and dashboards. So that's Contruent Enterprise. All of those capabilities are available to customers as standard out-of-the-box systems, with the exception of the integration, because that tends to be unique to every customer. We serve multiple industries. Megan, in her intro of me, was kind enough to point out that I've had some experience in most of these industries. It's one of the great things about what I do for a living, traveling around. I've been able to work on utilities, power and energy projects, mining. Mining was where Contruent got its start as Ares Prism back in 1995. Of course, infrastructure we're going to focus on heavily today. And our view is simple, especially with an out-of-the-box system, is that a project is a project. You might have different coding structures. You might be dealing with different contractors in different space, but you're still, in large part, dealing with the same type of data. And we can help you handle that data and set it up regardless of what industries you're in. And we've served all of them over the years. We are a global business. I'm in Washington, D.C. Our company is headquartered in the United States, but we are global. We have offices in Australia, of course. We have them in the UK. We have North America, Canada, and the US. We have a presence in the Middle East, and we support customers throughout Asia, Latin America as well. If you're checking logos on the screen, this is not all of them, but over the years, there are some of the biggest, most recognizable logos and some very interesting projects across, again, every major industry. While we're global, we do have local support. We are global so that your support is local. So on the left-hand side of the screen, this is our leadership team. I'm joined by others, Chief Strategy Officer, our CEO, obviously, marketing. We're all US-based, but to the right-hand side of the screen, we have an Asia-Pacific team, primarily in Australia. Neil Burleson, who's at the top left, is our general manager. He's going to join us for the panel discussion. And unlike me, who's going to answer questions from a software provider perspective, he's going to answer questions from a customer point of view. He was our customer at Inland Rail, ARTC in the Brisbane area, and prior to that at Origin Energy. So he'll wear a customer hat for the panel discussion. Most of our consultants who are listed on the screen have worked in the industry and have held jobs similar to your jobs. They've been on the customer side of life before joining us. And I guess I'll call out Craig Carmichael specifically. I'm not sure if he's on this call, but he's currently working for Robert Stockwell in Hong Kong right now on MTR projects. So we try to make sure that we're giving you support in your region and when we can on site with you. Our implementation, and this is something I referenced earlier, our claim to fame. Our implementations are fast. Faster to deliver is our mantra. We do have the ability to stand up projects quickly, no matter what size, no matter what complexity. 12 to 20 weeks, we can get you going. We can then stick around, help you through period closes, or even provide ongoing support, which we do from time to time. But getting you to a go live state, because of the way we manage the software, because of the processes and the experience on our teams, and because of the out of the box approach that we take to implementations, we can get you to that goal line very quickly. We've done mega projects such as the Dubai World Fair, billions of dollars, and we got them up in 12 weeks. The way we do it primarily is the experience that I talked about. And I've listed on the right-hand side just a few examples of customers that we've provided this kind of service for, specifically in the Australian market, just so I can draw attention away from the global aspect into what you as Australians care about on this call. And then I'll close my section of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions about our software or delivery methods. We do stand by it with fixed price offerings, by the way. I meant to say that on the earlier slide. But I'll close off with a quick case study as a nice transition over to Robert Stockwell, who's going to talk about MTR. He is one of our customers. We have supported him on a recent implementation. We continue to support him now with further initiatives. But we are providing cost, contract, and change management specifically for MTR right now. And the types of things that we've been able to help with is we've been able to help with some of the reporting, setting up reporting at portfolio, project, and contract levels so that the PMO and Robert and his peers can analyze the data at various different levels. We've helped them automate reporting and remove some legacy systems and candidly get less reliance on Excel so that you can close the periods more quickly. So some good tangible returns there and some benefits. Get control of funding by department. And the one that I see, I would say almost everywhere I go in the world, and is one of the hardest ones that customers, one of the hardest challenges customers face, is achieving cost and schedule integration, which we've helped MTR do. I'm sure we have more work to do on future projects with them, but achieving that cost and schedule integration is what gets you a lot of the performance measurement. And we've also helped give clearer visibility into control for owner and contractor budgets and schedule and contingency, so that when you're talking to the right audiences in the right rooms, you're dealing with the right set of data. So that's how we've supported our customer, Robert Stockwell, who's going to take over from me now and speak next about his project management office for MTR. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Carl. I'm Robert Stockwell, as I've been introduced, GM of the Project Management Office for MTR. So I'm going to take you through a bit of an introduction here on some of what we're doing at MTR and also how we've integrated project controls into our PMO. So moving on to the next slide. I'm going to talk about the new railway extensions project. So that's really the sort of an introduction to what we're actually doing, what we're building. I'll then take you through the overview and functions of the PMO that we've established. I'll put up on the screen an organization chart as well. I'm not expecting people to read the different roles, but it just gives an indication as to how we've set ourselves up so that we can manage these complex projects. I'll talk about some of the achievements we've made over the first sort of half of this year or 3/4 of this year, and some of the areas we're focusing on for the latter half. And then I'll draw the conclusions from there. So without further ado, let's get into the new railway extension projects. So on this screen, I've just got a map of Hong Kong. Some of you may be familiar or not. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to explain to you about the projects we've got here. I'll draw attention first of all to the top right-hand corner at Kwu Tung Station. That is currently around 60% complete and is the next station that we will be forecasting to open in 2027. It will also be the 100th station that MTR will have opened in Hong Kong. So, there's a lot of political pressure on our ability to perform and deliver that station, with it being the 100th station. I'll move your attention over to the left-hand side where we have Hong Soi Kyu Station on the top left. That station there hasn't even started. Actually, we're doing ground investigation works at the moment. So, with that project, we have an existing viaduct, and what we plan to do is build our station offline and then skid it into position over a weekend of possession or non-traffic hours. So that's a really complex piece of engineering where we've got lots of off-site fabrication, units coming to site, and then we're building all together and sliding it in. To give you some sense of scale, the up track and down track sections that we'll be sliding in will be more than 200 meters each in one push. So really complex. Worth noting as well that the railway, the viaduct that we'll be sliding onto is also an operational railway. So many people are very interested in that. Lots of stakeholders, really complex engineering. Now the one below that, Tuen Mun South, that is an extension of railways with 3 new railway stations as well on there. Also with a new build of a just over 2.5 kilometre long viaduct along a river as well. So again, very different style of engineering to the Hongsoi Q station that I mentioned. But again, lots of complexity when you're talking about the engineering that we're doing and interface with the existing railway. Tunmun South Station, that's made probably around 20% complete. So again, thinking about some of the projects I've mentioned already in development phase, 60% complete, 20% complete. We've got projects through all sorts of different phases of the life cycle at the moment. The Tung Chung line at the bottom there. Now this is again another 3 stations that we're building here, but also extending the railway over many kilometres. It includes a twin bore TBM tunnel drive as well. That's just over 1 kilometre in each direction. Over in the west of that station as well. So again, very different feats of engineering here as well. The last project that we're currently on with at the moment that I'll draw your attention to is the Airport Railway Extended Overrun Tunnel. Again, this is one that we're in development on, and it's right in the centre of Hong Kong. It cannot be any closer to the centre of Hong Kong. It's outside HSBC buildings and in very expensive real estate. Now, that involves us building a new extension to an existing tunnel, and it's going to be a really interesting project because it's in an area that was heavily bombed during World War II, and so we've got risk of unexploded ordnance and all of the utilities that are there. Some of them will be unmapped, I'm sure. It's going to be a very interesting and very heavy on risk, I think, project. Before we go off this slide, I will draw attention to one other project actually, or portfolio. It's the NOL, or Northern Link project in the top of the screen there. That is a huge connection of a railway up the top there that sort of brings a lot of our stations all into an area up there called the Northern Metropolis, that Hong Kong government are very keen to start developing that as a new area, a new economic area. That railway is going to be the largest railway that MTR, most complex railway that MTR have built. It has over 15 kilometres of tunnels. It's got cut and cover tunnels. It's got multiple stations. It also has a spur line into southern China, into Shenzhen. So we've got cross-border construction going on as well. That is very much in the development phase. We're still talking to government and others about our plans for those works. And it's probably the one that we're most excited about, but also one that carries a significant amount of risk. So I'll move on. With the projects that I've just described to you, there's a lot of contracts, a lot of interfaces that we've got in place there. So just looking at the ones I've mentioned, without talking about the Northern Link that I've just explained, we've got more than 60 consultancy and advanced works contracts, and more than 40 main contracts that we're managing all the time to deliver the projects, contracts and those projects across those portfolios. So we've pretty much got, if you include this list and a few others that we have there, we've probably got 10 projects that we're delivering over the next 10 years. The projects that I was talking about before that are currently underway, the large majority of them are due to complete in 2030, 2032, with the exception of the one I mentioned before, the 100th station that's planned to be opened in 2027. Now, we've got all those contracts with those projects across those portfolios, and we're spending over 100 billion Hong Kong dollars to deliver that. And it's significantly over 100 billion Hong Kong dollars at this moment, actually. And for those on the call, 100 billion dollars, Hong Kong dollars, would be about 20 billion Australian dollars, I believe. So significant sums of money. So moving to the next slide. So what's the PMO here to do? Well, obviously, with all the complexity around delivering all those contracts, projects, portfolios in complex engineering over a 8-year cycle, with projects in different phases and spending significant sums of money, we need to be pretty well organised. So the PMO is here to make sure that we're a well organised organisation. So PMO is a value-centric office, and we're there to ensure that we've got consistency in the way that we carry our measurement. We analyse, forecast, and assure the reporting of performance on our projects. Obviously, we can't be having different assessments across different projects, or we'll never know collectively where we are. So that's hugely important. We're also there to make sure we're able to make best for project decisions. And what I mean by that is that an individual project or an individual contract may approach us to say they want some investment in a particular piece of engineering, or implement some form of change, and it might be the best for their contract, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's best for projects. So as a PMO, we're able to look at the benefits in the round across all of the project, and also MTR as a corporation, to ensure that we're making the right decisions. We're investing where we need it. We're also the conscience of the corporation. So we report on the health of the projects. And what I mean by this is that when I take information from project reviews and then I turn it around and I present it to the CEO, I'm talking to the CEO about our performance. I'm identifying what our risks are and making sure that everybody's informed of the risks that are ahead of us. So there's no sort of covering up of information. There's no, we try to avoid optimum bias. We're the conscience of the corporation in that regard. I mentioned before that the PMO, is around for the full life cycle of the project. So we're not here just for the interesting civil engineering, building viaducts, tunneling. We're here at the planning and development phase. So we're involved with that, with our programming teams that are looking at the different programs that we're looking at to see that we're able to have a viable project to enter into an agreement with government with. Our risk teams are looking at the initial reviews of risk registers, which ultimately form part of our budgets that we sign up to deliver these complex projects. We're here during implementation and delivery, as you'd expect. We're here in monitoring, reporting. We're going through and working with our supply chain in reviewing programs, risk registers. We're establishing baselines. Obviously, we're reporting all the way through our corporation. We're working with contractors at one level, all the way up to the CEO and board members at the very top of the organisation. And also, we're there for completion and closeout, which are usually quite a tricky part of the process, when people fall out at the end over money, more or less. We try to avoid that, and we're there to support our commercial team and the organisation at large with getting us through testing and commissioning, getting the railways opened, and then closing out commercially. Now, as you might have picked up as I've been talking so far, the functions of the PMO aren't just program. We're responsible for cost management, program management, risk and opportunity management, health of the project, reporting, and very importantly, change and baseline management. All of those things make up the integrated PMO, which we see in the centre there. So all of those individual work streams, they complement each other and they impact each other. And so an example of this would be that obviously if our program is forecasting a delay, I expect to see that the cost management team have assessed that delay in the same period, so that I've got a holistic review of what the estimate of completion will be. It's no good for me that I'm reporting delay 1 month and then I'm only talking about the cost of what that delay is in the following month or the following quarter. All of this needs to be integrated. We need to understand, the basis under which we're making decisions. I mentioned before that there was an organisation chart. Again, I don't expect anyone to read this, but the concept of this is really just to introduce the fact that you've got a dotted blue line down the middle of the organisation chart there. And to the left, we've got the PMO COE, or Centre of Excellence. And to the right, we've got an embedded team. This is really about the fact that what we've got as a PMO, or the team that I manage, are both in the centre in the office, where they're defining the ways in which we're going to work consistently, we're assuring our information, and we're giving leadership and good practice to the teams out in the portfolios. But we have those technical individuals out in the projects implementing the controls that we've set, and making sure we're able to really understand how our projects are performing. So we've got an embedded team and a centre of excellence team. I think the point here really is that the information, the important point here for me is that the information flows in both directions. The Centre of Excellence team is not a superior team in any way. It doesn't cast down, actions that must be carried out, that must be obeyed. It is about passing information both ways. So the Centre of Excellence team will provide guidance to the projects, and the projects team will provide feedback to say that is or is not working. We've got a problem here. Can you help us fix it? An example might be project is struggling with forecasting the impact of inflation across our projects. While they're having all the contractors giving them all different pieces of advice, the Centre of Excellence could figure it out and then brief it out to the embedded team. That embedded team could then provide feedback on whether it's successful or not. So that's the concept about how we're organised. Move us on. Some of the achievements in 2025. The reason I've put this slide in is because I arrived at MTR at the beginning of 2025. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that we've achieved here that were really important for us. First of all, I restructured the PMO into that COE and embedded teams. So I looked at the organisation that we had, realised that some people weren't really right for the roles they were sat in. We reorganised ourselves, and now we're seeing that the teams are really engaged and working well together. We set up a project review meeting that's carried out every month. Some organisations might call it a spiky chair meeting, but it's an opportunity for the team to come and tell us some of their issues and request help from senior management, and also be challenged themselves. We improved our cost reporting structures, so that was a really important task. And probably the most important one in the early part of this year was establishing a baseline. When I arrived to MTR, the baseline was very outdated. It meant that people were coming into the project review meetings and not really able to describe their performance and understand the impact. So we very quickly got to work on that. And any project professionals out there will understand the importance of having a baseline. We also produced off the back of that baseline many weekly measures, and we leveraged our digital capabilities to do that. So we have weekly production curves that come out every week to tell us how we're performing against that baseline. We took a wholesale review of our risk management process, and now all risks are quantified within our applications, and the application we use is Predict, and perhaps we'll talk about that a little later. And also worth giving a shout out to Contruent, of course. We implemented, or we went from a on-prem solution to a SaaS solution that Carl was talking about earlier, and that's been very successful for us. That's allowed pretty much all the things that Carl introduced, actually, so we're much more nimble in the way that we report our information. We can get better insights now. And really the dashboard reporting function in Contruent, we were able to enable that very, very quickly in the SaaS system, rather than having to build lots of reporting, off the back of our databases. So that was a good success. Now I'll move on to the next slide, and we'll stop talking about the past and look at some of the things we're doing at the moment. So we keep moving the slide on. Thank you. So at the moment, we're going through and updating some digital capabilities for performance dashboarding and automated data sourcing and modeling. And these first two ones I'm talking about here really are about the integration of all of our applications and data. Again, Carl mentioned earlier on that some of the pain points that mega projects come across is how do we integrate our information? And I talked about the need to have integrated controls so that we're ensuring that we're able to review the outcomes of these projects consistently, whether it be time and cost together, risk as well. We need to be able to get access to all that information and integrate it together. So that's a big piece of work we're on at the moment. Automated cost reporting. We're totally enhancing the way we do QSRAs. So if there are any people with programming and risk experience on the call, they'll understand that QSRA can be a bit of a pain at times. But we're enhancing the way we do that, and actually I think we've got some really good outcomes coming from that. We're also looking at enhancing our rules of credit. So this is really about earned value, and this is one that I actually think is a bit of a pain, and organizations typically struggle with establishing earned value and rules of credit. So we're looking at that at the moment, because my intention is that we'll be able to leverage some much more advanced ways of looking at our progress on our projects, using BIM models, using integration with our cost tools, and all sorts of other things. Perhaps, again, we'll talk about that a little later. And we've got a digital change app as well that we're building in-house at the moment as well. And this is really important to me because, as I mentioned before, some of these projects are in different phases. So we really want to set off on the right foot forward on some of the projects that are on development that will become live before very long, and make sure that we're working as best as we can. Some of the projects that are currently underway, we're trying to retrofit them, and there's only so much we can change when you're 60% of the way through. Delivering a station that's pretty much in its E&M phase. So we're really looking at getting a change management process in place that means that we can establish our controls early and then control them, have a control mechanism in place as we move forward, whether it be new control accounts, whether it be new reviewer approvers, that change control really needs to be in place. And if I keep moving us on. This is just an indication of some of the battle we've got from a digital point of view. In the center of the circle, you'll see there we've got the Capital Works visualization platform. And this is really about enabling us, establishing a data warehouse that's able to pull information from all of these systems and then obviously understand our performance. So we've got CMAR in there for our commercial tools. We've got iSuper. We've got Predict, as I mentioned before, that was risk. And obviously, very importantly, we've got Contruent in there as well. So this is really explaining that we've got all these different systems that capture different levels of information for us, and we need to draw it all in so that we can then very quickly and effectively report the project progress and start making decisions on it. Not spend our time at period end, trying to pull all this information together, draw the lines, create reports. That's just taking too much time. We need to be able to have this stuff automated. So I'll move on to the next slide, and this is really drawing a conclusion. And I would say that a fully functioning integrated PMO is essential for the successful delivery of projects and portfolios. I mentioned before about the consistency and the integration of all those different levels of controls. They're essential. I can't go and talk to our CEO and tell him the performance of our projects if I'm not aware of all aspects of the performance of our projects. So the PMO is fundamental in doing that. Now, Project Management Office doesn't stand for, the PMO doesn't stand for Program Management Office. When I first came to Hong Kong, most of the people I spoke to, PMO, they just kept saying program. Oh, you look after the program, you look after the program. Evidently not. Change management, cost management, risk and opportunity, the health of the program, earned value, reporting. We cover an awful lot from bottom to top of this organization. Integrated project controls is obviously the bit that I keep saying here. It's really, really important. One of the things that it really relies upon is establishing a cadence of collecting and assessing the project information so that you can have a robust reporting timeline. Now, it's often called the drumbeat. For some of my colleagues here in Hong Kong, I explained this to them as the drummer on a dragon boat. The best dragon boat, it follows a good drummer that makes sure that everyone is pulling in the same direction at the same time. And the dragon boat that does the best job of that typically will win. So that's the same with integrated project controls. We need a good drumbeat that everyone knows when they're collecting information, how they assess it, where it goes, who looks at it next, and ultimately where it ends up. So that's a hugely important piece. And digitization, leverage and invest in digital to ensure the data is controlled and consistently assessed. I think I made my point in pretty much all of the previous slides here on digitization, and we've also got huge amount of work ahead of us on how we start to leverage things like AI, automation, and integration of all of our different systems. So with that, I'll draw my presentation to a close. Thank you.
Thank you. Big thank you to Rob and Carl for their input and for setting the scene for us today. I'd now like to introduce Neil Burleson, who will be joining our panel discussion. Neil is a seasoned energy and infrastructure expert with over 3 decades of industry experience. He has recently been appointed GM APAC at Contruent to drive growth in the Asia-Pacific region. Neil brings extensive expertise in the global energy and infrastructure sectors, I have to get my words out, having held senior leadership roles across major international and Australian organisations. Most recently, he served as CFO at Inland Rail and previously as head of finance at Origin Energy, one of Australia's leading energy companies, as well as international roles at BP. He has played a key role in the delivery of complex, capital-intensive programs, including large-scale energy projects. Neil holds an MBA and is a fellow of the Chartered Management Accountants. So please join me in welcoming Neil, Rob, and Carl. Well, I'll kick off our panel discussion today. And the first one, we've got Carl there, is, and I might direct this question at all of you, and it is, all of you have extensive experience in large-scale infrastructure and transportation projects. What do you see as the biggest pain points in managing capital projects today? So maybe if I go, Carl, did you want to kick off?
Sure, I'm happy to. Then if I get it wrong, someone like Robert or Neil will correct me. Look, I guess what I have seen, it could be a long list to list these pain points, but always from a controls lens is how I'm viewing these things. And I think really it's two things that are kind of the biggest pain points, and I see them over and over everywhere we go with new customers. Rob alluded to it in his presentation. Coding structures. In order to integrate the different functions of a PMO, the different data, whether it's coming from a contract system like CMAR to a cost system like ours, or the risk system, the schedule system. So many times we show up at customers and they've got coding structures that don't marry well. And it's a challenge to get those things aligned. And that's usually where a lot of our work with customers starts, is getting the coding structures right before we even get to reporting, just so that you can get the integration and the overall picture and the communication between the systems. The other, I think, again, Rob referred to it directly, and it's a strength of ours, is he mentioned rules of credit, and I know he'll get more into that, but earned value and performance reporting is all based on how you measure the actual progress. And if it's subjective, or if it's a guess or a thumb suck, you're going to get terrible output, terrible results, and you're not going to be able to use that for real decision making. So getting good, objective, quantifiable measures, we call them physical progress measures in our system, is such a huge part. And time and again, I go to customers and they don't have that sorted yet. And they need help to think through how to set those structures up. So I'd say from a controls perspective, those are two of the biggest pain points that recur over and over on these big projects.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Carl. Rob, did you want to maybe answer that question as well?
Yeah, well, actually, I'll cover off a couple of points that Carl's raised there. One about the sort of integration of data across multiple tools and systems and applications. So he's absolutely right. Those are definitely a major pain point. But I also think that another area where big projects struggle with is actually defining and getting data out of their contractors. So as I mentioned before earlier in my presentation, we have, between our consultants and our main contractors, we've got more than 100 different contracts here that we manage. And saying to them, I need this level of information from you. I need to understand your physical progress, your cost, and it should be assessed in this way. And I do need to understand your forecast in a more complex way, because it's important for my cash flow. All of those things. Often we find that when we get to a point in a project, typically when we start to diverge commercially, or if performance starts to diverge from the baseline and what and the outcomes that we need, contractors start to provide a more opaque set of information. So we need to make sure that we've got a team embedded actually that are capable of still assessing the performance of projects without necessarily the really granular level of information they might be used to or might expect from the supply chain.
Thank you. And Neil?
Yes, thank you very much. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So I just add to what both Rob and Carl have said. They focused internally. For myself, some of the pain points from an external perspective are just the changing external environment. Approvals can take a week, a month, a year. There's no set timeline for it. So that brings a lot of pressure onto the project. And also sometimes you see changes in policy, especially government policy. So if you've got a project that's going to span 5-10 years, it's quite difficult sometimes to plan what will happen in those 5 to 10 years. And therefore, having good project control systems actually help you, that when something does change, you can see the change immediately, you can react immediately, and that helps remove some of the pain points, but not all of them.
Thanks, Neil. Probably, Neil, you may have actually just kind of answered this question, but the next one is, why has project control software become such a critical part of delivering outcomes on time and on budget? So maybe if you wanted to address that
Yes,
one.
certainly. Yes, certainly. So, as a former CFO in a large scale project, one of the things that kept me awake at night was the assurance and governance framework that I needed to have in place. I was running a multi-billion-dollar project with a lifespan of 7 to 10 years. I needed to make sure that I could have a good assurance and governance framework in place that would allow me to report with confidence to the board, to the management team, and to the shareholders. Rob alluded to it earlier as well. And it's all about knowing that when you do the reporting, you're not misreporting, it's accurate, fact-checked information. And that gives you then the comfort that everything is working as planned. On large scale projects, fraud can be prevalent. You have to make sure you've got controls in place to prevent fraud. And as I alluded to slightly earlier, no misreporting, because there's nothing worse than having to go back and say, actually, what we told you last week or last month was incorrect, and these are the new numbers. So good project control systems, whichever software you use, are imperative in project management.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Robert, I suppose, Rob, from your point of view, is there anything that you wanted to add to that one from, I suppose, with your customer take?
I think project controls, and the criticality around projects being on time and on budget. We mentioned it earlier, actually, and it's about, for me, managing change is really important. It can be very complex. Certainly we have, and most projects I've worked on have had specific delegation of authority, which means certain change can be approved up to a certain level. Having a system in place that helps you manage that and understand how change impacts your forecast of risk and cost is really, really important. Really about the whole piece about integration, it sort of hangs off a lot of that. And we need those systems in place to have the single source of truth that we just mentioned, in order that we can give the confidence to exec and board and shareholders and the like. So that's why I think they're so important.
And from that, Rob, can you share from MTR's digital transformation journey, what were the key drivers behind adopting new project management technologies?
Yeah, sure. And I kind of covered a little bit of this in the presentation that I gave, really, because I've been at MTR since the beginning of this year. And one of the things that we needed to do first and foremost, really, that added the most value, was establishing the performance measurement baseline. Now, that baseline didn't include just the program. We reviewed our cost, we reviewed all of our measures related to earned values. So we carried out an assurance piece to make sure we'd assessed the progress of the works correctly, physical progress of works. We also looked at our planned values so that we could use some measures like CPI and SPI in earned value through this year to measure our cost performance. We looked at commercial compensation, EAC assessments or estimate completion assessments. All of those things that we did at the beginning of this year were hugely important, just to get us into a space where we needed to be, just to get the basics right, really. From there on, the sort of journey from a technologies point of view has really been some key individual wins, really, which is one was quantifying our risks entirely in the Predict software. Contruent Going from premium to SaaS has given us great advantages when it comes to getting our data out quickly at period end. I talked about how important that drumbeat is for us to quickly be able to pull information out and assess it and understand the performance of our projects. And the other thing I would say is that I also mentioned about some of the work we're on at the moment. So the journey that we're going now is about the data visualization platform. So that's our data warehousing. We're going to pull all this different information together. When it comes to earned value, one of the things I'm most interested in, a bit of a geek, a bit excited about actually, is leveraging our BIM models and integrating them not just with our program, which lots of people do, but also with our cost system with Contruent. And when I've done that, with some good skills and good digital solutions in place, I should be able to use the BIM model, the daily site records, and Contruent to earn value and assess my planned value, without having to have someone carry out detailed measures and all the things that we talked earlier as a pain point. So that's a really interesting piece of digital that I'm looking to get into sort of end of this year, early part of next.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Rob. Now, the next question I have, I'll direct towards, I'll keep you, Rob. I'll have you as part of the answer. And also you, Carl, I'll bring you in. And it's, what measurable improvements have you seen in project delivery or decision making as a result of MTR's digital initiatives? So who wants to jump off or go first, I should say?
Well, since we're talking about MTR, maybe I'll go in first, and then anything I miss off, Carl, and you'll be able to supplement, I'm sure. So the most measurable improvements I've seen here since I've been here has been greater understanding of the impact of change, better understanding of our risk exposure. Whilst we understood our risks, they weren't well quantified, as I said before, so no one really understood really how the impact of those risks could manifest on our projects, not as well as I'd like. But now we're in a very good place with that. We didn't really have a good combined working relationship with our commercial department as well. So the PMO was working very much in a silo. They weren't working alongside their colleagues in commercial. Now, the problem with that is that we've got NEC4 contracts, which are typically, certainly on a large civils contracts, are option C. And I mentioned earlier how much money we're spending here, hundreds of billions of Hong Kong dollars. The decisions that our commercial teams make, or the compensation that they assess with our supply chain, has a direct impact on our estimate of completion. So if my team are not working with and coordinating with our commercial team, then I'm not in the position to be able to accurately tell our senior leadership and others where these projects are, where they're going. So for me, that relationship across the MTR organization has really moved on a lot. And I think we're at a much more robust place now than we were when I first joined at the beginning of the year.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob and Carl.
I won't. I won't presume to think that I can add much to what Rob just said about his own organization. I thought that was great. Thank you.
Well, Carl, I'll direct the next question to you. So from your experience across global clients, what separates organizations that successfully implement project controls from those that struggle to get value from it?
Well, I guess it might sound a little bit cliche to say this, but really it's leadership I have found is the biggest driver of success. And Rob actually in his presentation, when he talked about his early days at MTR and setting up the systems and putting people in the right roles, his first answer wasn't get a great software. His first answer wasn't make sure I'm getting the right reports. The first thing that the leader needs to do is, are people in the right roles? Do we have the right processes in place? Do people understand the processes? Have they been trained? Have you enabled your people to understand where they fit in the process? And then perhaps most importantly from a leadership perspective is, are you communicating as you work through the changes, and are you holding people accountable to work with the processes that you've put in place and the systems that you've selected, whether you select our system or any other system that was on the screen when Rob showed 10 or 11 different systems? you have to enforce that and make sure that people are using what you've purchased and following the process that you've set up. So it's leadership. It has to come from the top down. The organizations that fail are the ones who buy a system and think the system will solve all the problems, or who don't pay attention to some of those communications and holding people to task. So that's what I've found almost everywhere for the last 20 years.
Thanks for that, Carl. Well, kind of going from understanding, getting that project control in place, then moving my questions, the next few questions probably are more around the tools itself. So, Neil, I'll bring you into direct this next question to yourself. It is, how can digital tools improve visibility into costs, schedules, and risk, particularly across multi-contractor or across cross-border projects?
Yeah, thanks. It's a really good question, very insightful. A lot of these large CapEx projects come with complexity, and the digitalization and tools that are used enable you to manage that complexity in a way that previously you couldn't. So, for example, if you've got a large multi-capex project that has perhaps 6, 7, 10 different sub-projects, you need to be able to manage each individual sub-project itself, and yet at the same time roll that up into either a portfolio or a program of projects. And the tools allow you to do that very easily. In many of our clients in the resource sector, we have joint ventures. So the tools allow you to show the progress in multi-currency, joint ventures percentages at the flick of a switch or a click on a button. So that really helps, and it minimizes the amount of time that you need to take to prepare the data and give you more time to analyze the data. And similarly, the closing of the books, digitalization allows you to just get more accurate information so much quicker. All of the projects that I've worked on, we closed the books on Workday 2. We did our forecast, full life cycle of the project forecast by Workday 4, and we completed our reporting by Workday 10. And if you can achieve those timelines, then you truly do give yourself that advantage over the others, that you can analyze your projects better. You can spend more time analyzing the data and planning rather than retrospectively looking at what happened.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Neil. And then going into the next one, it may be slightly similar answer, but Carl, I'll direct it to you. What are some of the most effective ways teams can build accountability and collaboration across these different project stakeholders using the technology?
Well, ironically, my very first thought when I read this question was, despite the question being about technology, I actually think sometimes you still need to get people together periodically so that you see each other's faces and you can work through issues. You can get to know your counterparts. But with respect to the technology, though, you need to make sure that you're training people on where they fit in the larger process. I think everybody comes to work every day with the best intentions to do a good job, but they don't always understand how what they do affects the next person in line in a process. So I would say that making sure they understand that where their data goes next in the process is important. The technology, of course, can create visibility. You can share data on performance across all the teams so people can see how their teams are doing and how they're performing. And then I had this written down before Rob actually put his slide up about the two halves of his PMO, the Center of Excellence, and then the delivery teams. And so I liked when he talked about that it's a safe space for the two groups to share information. And one of the things that I think, whether you're talking about technology or anything else, really is you have to remove the blame culture. Issues happen on these projects. If you want people to collaborate and you want them to take accountability and be responsible and raise issues, you have to remove a blame culture, and you have to create a culture there where folks can communicate with each other, solve problems together. They're not afraid to raise issue and be the conscience of an organization because they're going to get help rather than blamed. So I think it's not necessarily a technology answer, but I think it's an important part of how you create that collaboration in your teams.
Awesome. Look, what I might do, we do have a few live questions coming through. So hopefully the panel are all okay if I jump into some of those live questions.
Sure.
Now, I think we've got Peter who's watching live. So big hello to Peter. And his question is, cost overruns are the bane of many railway projects. How do you maintain project control when one of the major influences is the contractors / consultings whose major motivator is profit? Who wants to address that one? I thought that was a good question. Oh, Rob, hand up. I love it.
Yeah, I'm eager to get in there because it's one that is close to me. All my career I've had this problem. Well, not all my career. Half my career I've spent as the contractor side, another half has been on the client side. So actually, I was the villain to begin with, where I was chasing compensation, et cetera, and now I've seen it on the other side of the fence for some time. The challenge we have is making sure that the teams in controls don't just take information from our contractors and immediately pass it on. They need to understand the performance of our project and also understand that should our contractors start to stop providing accurate information or information that we don't think is accurate, we need to be able to still be informed and skilled, suitably skilled and have the right tools and resources around us that we're able to make our assessment, whether it be implementing we have an integrated master program. So where we have all those different contracts I mentioned before, there's circa 100 contracts across, let's say, 10 projects and 3 portfolios. We've got an integrated master program that aggregates all of that information, integrates it so that we can assess how a project is doing, but not just that, how are those projects doing within that portfolio and that portfolio within the program. So really, my challenge back to the team is they should be able to use controls to continually assess the performance of our projects and understand whether we're looking for an overrun. Earned value, we can do that with fairly small amount of information from our contractors. They're still obliged under the contracts that we have in place to submit their application for payment, which is based on defined costs. So that gives us really good, clear indication as to what they've spent. It does include for small amounts of accrual that we can disallow. So that gives us a good indication. We've got all this information at our fingertips that we can use. We're not entirely reliant on the contractor when it starts to get commercial. So the team have to maintain their focus. They have to maintain the procedures and the processes under which we carry out controls on our projects. And if they do that, we can continue to see through the commercial issues with our contractors, and ultimately we'll use that information we have to arm our commercial team so that they can reach some form of agreement. Because in the end, we've got to come to an agreement.
Great answer. Thanks for that, Rob. Moving on with the next question, and I have seen this question come through. We actually received it when one of our audience members registered for today. And it's, I suppose, one I'll maybe direct to you, Carl. It's around looking ahead. How do you see AI, automation, or predictive analytics influencing capital project management in the next 5 years?
So I will talk about it, and I'll talk about it a little bit through the lens of what we're doing with our software as well. And I know that Rob and his organization is looking at AI, so folks would probably like to hear how a customer is viewing it. What we've seen and what we're focused on at Contruent with the solutions we provide, there's a short-term game plan and then there's a longer-term game plan. And what I see being achievable and realistic in the near term is working on more rules-based AI, things like earned value, measuring progress, creating reports more quickly. Those aren't hard things to solve. You don't necessarily need huge databases of data from all the customers around the globe to be able to do that. So we're focusing on creating engines that allow you to interact with your reports, generate the reports more quickly, create some narratives around what's going on in that report so that people don't need to necessarily interpret the report on their own. They get a project narrative. And then maybe the biggest one that people forget about is so important is identifying where the data is bad, where something is missing, where something's not connected, where if there's schedulers on the call or planners, you have, you don't have the critical path set up correctly, or there's open ends in your schedule. Finding those sorts of things so you can clean up your data. That's the near-term things that we're focused on, and I know other software providers are focused on. For the longer term, and it may be in the next 5 years, maybe sooner, but one of the challenges, and there was a question around this with language learning models and things like that, doing benchmarking and creating tools that can actually run the whole analysis for you. One of the challenges is that most of these projects around the world don't want to share their data. There's sensitivity. If you're MTR, you don't necessarily want that data out there in the world, like accessible to a ChatGPT type engine. Inland Rail would have had the same problem. A lot of these projects don't necessarily want to share their data, but people are getting more comfortable with it. So as we're able to gather more data, as we're able to build up large databases, then I think there's tremendous opportunity for AI engines to create lessons learned environments, do benchmarking, and actually spot some of these trends and drive information out more quickly ahead of time based on how it's been done elsewhere and how realistically other projects have performed. But I think that's going to take a little bit longer. I think the rules-based AI is going to happen more quickly and be available soon.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Carl. Rob, did you want to talk on that from MTR's perspective?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess AI is very interesting to us because, unlike lots of other major programs, we're actually an operational company, but we're in the business of doing some major programs too. Now, since I've been here, we've briefed out to the team a new way of working. We want them to look at different ways of doing cost management, risk management, etc. And we've written a whole load of processes and tools. So this is a really simple application of AI. Actually, we've got an AI bot, a chat bot, that means that someone from our team can just simply go onto the chat bot and say, how do I do earned value? How do I carry out an earned value assessment? And it will take them to the processes. It will have links, and it will have external reading material, so that individual, if they're not quite sure and they're still trying to get up to speed with how we do things, they very quickly can get access to that information. It means that they're not having to sort of sit there with printed out processes sitting on their desk and turning pages and searching for it. Our commercial team can use it to query the contract as well. So that very simple application of AI is a here and now use that we're taking advantage of. To Carl's point about analysing the data, I think that's something that we need to embed sooner rather than later. We might, as MTR, might not want to share its information, but I'd point out that we've built 99 stations already. So we've got some really good data internally that could give us some indication as to how we like to perform in the future that we're not necessarily using. We've tunneled all over Hong Kong, and I'm now talking about a huge piece of work in the northern metropolis, the Northern Link, that's predominantly a tunneling and stations job. So I should be able to query all sorts of different benchmarking information, cost, what sort of risks did we come across, how was the program. AI can help me to do that very, very quickly. And also I think that the automation of carrying out certain assessments, I mentioned it much earlier on, and again, Carl alluded to it about with regards to earned value. I think that AI and automation just generally can do a huge amount of the work for us on earned value and assessing performance of our projects to date. Using the model, which has all the quantities in it, all of our site records, which are stored in a different system, they can be linked with that, and our cost and risk systems can be linked as well. We could even find ourselves in a position where we're able to identify trends of underperformance that ultimately could then automatically draft raise a trend that we could then review to see whether we want to change our EAC. A lot of that is the heavy lifting, the period end stuff that our costs engineers carry out, all through project controls. The whole team's involved, commercial team. A lot of that starts to get automated. What I would say, though, is that it can't be entirely relied upon. It doesn't remove the need for skilled professionals to interpret the data and make decisions. And that's the one thing about AI I really need to reinforce. Just because we're looking at implementing different elements of AI, it doesn't remove the need for skilled, professional, experienced individuals to understand what that all means.
Thanks for that, Rob. We had a question which came through from Wayne Bender from WA, and Wayne submitted this while he registered for today's webinar. So thank you, Wayne. I might direct this one to Carl to begin with, and if Neil or Rob would like to add. But his question was, Carl, how do you manage change during execution?
Okay. I think I volunteered for this one, but Rob, having been in a change role, I think might have a deeper answer. But if I look at this not as an organizational change management question, but change control, I would say there are a couple of things that organizations need to focus on, and I've long believed one of the most important ones for managing change during execution is that you actually assign a change manager role to somebody. Actually have somebody whose main responsibility is, especially on some of the larger programs and mega programs, that you have somebody whose job it is to understand the changes, to track the changes, to make sure they're in the system, to make sure all the supporting documentation has been collected and organized correctly in the systems and presented along with any change requests. So I have found that organizations that don't assign that role out struggle with it more than when somebody is actually given that responsibility. And then after that, the biggest things to focus on are make sure that you're paying attention to how you structure change, whether, make sure people understand what the difference is between a trend and a change and a risk, and what level of reporting is required around each one. Make sure that you have a communication plan and approval process and system that facilitates quick movement of the data through the workflows. As an example, on Crossrail, which is actually where I met Rob a number of years ago, when we first showed up, changes would sometimes sit in queues for days and weeks because there was no delegation of authority set up. So make sure that you have systems that facilitate that kind of movement through the workflow quickly. Set alarms and things that raise if something hasn't been actioned in a certain amount of time. Make sure you have appropriate escalations and approvals understood. So have clear policies, structured change types, and quick communications around change, which of course is all helped by having somebody in the seat who owns the change process.
Awesome. And I think there was one of the other questions that we had, which I was going to direct towards Rob and Neil. It was very much around large rail and infrastructure projects rely on multiple contractors and engineering partners. So how do you enforce this integrated project controls across organisations that don't share systems, data standards, or commercial incentives? So maybe Neil and Rob, if you'd like to answer that question.
Yes, certainly. So I think for me, one of the leading parts of this is about establishing some requirements from the contractors. You can put that into the contract itself, but to get them to adhere to a standard work breakdown structure or cost breakdown structure when they submit any invoices, to encourage them also to use the same system as you. It brings so many advantages, and many of the systems now have customer portals that they can interact with and feed their data into, and talk to them. Often you'll find that they themselves would prefer to have some form of standardization so that they can be compliant, and make sure that they work as collaboratively as they can and encourage and reward that collaboration as they move forward. It is a difficult topic to address, but I think if you address it in a positive way and everyone sees the benefits, then they will come to the table and see that collaboration will help. If it doesn't happen, then you've really got to adopt a policy that makes sure that each contractor, if it does operate in its own space, operates within your parameters so that they themselves are providing as much information to you in the correct format. I'll pass over to Rob for any insights from his side.
Yeah, I'll add one or two, I think. So often when we're trying to deal with contractor information, their submissions, it can sometimes be a bit like trying to ram a square peg into a round hole. So some of the things we've done here is we have joint risk review workshops. So we have an MTR risk manager that carries out and populates our risk database with the contractor's information as well. So we're assessing contractor's risk, shared risk, and MTR risk. So that sort of allows us to deal with some of those issues from a risk point of view. From a program point of view, we get all of our contractors' programs. We turn that into an integrated master program, which is by project and portfolio. And that means that we have interventions that we put into the projects, into the programs that help us to get all that contract information out. The area that we struggle with is in cost more than anywhere else. And what we're trying to do there actually is, recognize the fact that it'd be utopia if the contractors all had the same cost system as us, and we could just simply side pass it in and review it and assure it, and that would be that. But we just don't, and they're not going to change they're not going to change their systems. So instead, what we've done is we've created a sort of an import-export tool. So what we do is we take information out of Contruent, and we have the contractor populate that with their own systems, and then we re-import that back into Contruent. So that saves us a lot of time. We're defining to the contractors what format we want that information in.
Thanks for that, Rob. We've had a big question come through from our live audience. So I'll start with the first part of it. What lessons can be learned from past projects that experience significant cost overruns? So I suppose to understand what the most common causes of cost blowouts are and how they can be mitigated.
So I'm happy to take a stab at that one first. And it actually, there was an earlier question as well about what is the number one thing we would recommend to a new design manager, and it all kind of ties together for me. So there are a lot of causes for cost blowouts, how you did your contracting strategy, underperformance of the supply chain. But what I have found, and it relates to the lessons learned piece nicely as well, is that the design, getting the initial design and the requirements right up front, it's so important. It's the early part of the project. For the design managers on the call, you are the first gatekeepers to avoid scope creep. In so many ways, get the requirements right. And then, with respect to lessons learned, spend more time on that design process and making sure that the requirements are right. And then when you go back and you're evaluating lessons learned, I think what you'll find in a lot of places is that maybe that was pressed too quickly. When you're talking about design, maybe as you went from design to estimate and initial budgets and schedules were being developed, optimism bias entered the picture, and the design and the requirements called for X budget, but in order to get approvals and to maybe push things through in a public spotlight, a little bit of optimism crept in that we can do things better this time than maybe we did it the last 25 times. And so we foolishly, as humans, we would lower some of those numbers. But if we're going to learn those lessons, you got to get the design right, and then you have to hold to it. Whatever the story tells you and the requirements, whether it's 100 billion or 150 billion, if we get that part right up front, I think we can avoid a lot of these cost overruns. So I don't think the lessons learned are big surprises. I think they just sometimes get ignored with optimism bias. So I've attempted to answer 2 or 3 different questions in that one that came through in the live area. Neil or Rob, you want to add to
that? Did Neil or Rob want to add to that answer?
The other one I would.
You go, Neil, and then we'll end with Rob.
Neil, you go.
Okay, thank you. I would say part of the lessons learned is about talking to the people that have experienced the problems in the past and actually listening to them. So many times you see lessons learned that give the actual answer, but people choose, as Carl said, to ignore that answer for a variety of reasons. Actually step back and say, if that happened, then why did it happen, and how can I prevent it happening again? My team's got over 200 years of experience of projects. We've implemented project controls on over 30 different companies. So we've probably seen the majority of things that have happened. So use that experience just to say, where were the big problems and how did you address them, and listen. It's that proactive listening, not just dismissing it. I've listened, I've looked at the lessons learned, and now I know better. Actually go back and listen and put that into practice.
Thanks, Neil. And Rob?
Yeah, I'll add one more because there's a list of things as long as your arm that historically have gone wrong and caused big blowouts on major programs. The one that I want to focus on actually is the correct apportionment of risk, the right risk owner. You need to take the risk and make sure that it's placed with the person that can do something about it. Risk isn't a budget to be spent, it's cost that you want to mitigate. It's an event you want to mitigate, you want to stop it from happening. So you need to apportion that risk, give that risk to the right person who has the ability to mitigate it, to stop it from happening. All too often, I see clients typically where they just say, right, I'm going to push all the risk onto my contractor, regardless of whether they're the best person to deal with it or not, because I just want some form of security. I want to be risk averse. It's not the right thing to do. In some instances, dealing with stakeholders, which has cost, in my career, in the projects I've worked on, that interface with stakeholders has cost a fortune. And the contractors aren't best placed to deal with it sometimes. Sometimes the client needs to take a leading role. So for me, to avoid cost blowouts, risk needs to be allocated correctly, and we need engaged clients who are going to be actively managing their projects, not just sitting back and saying the contractor hasn't done X, Y, and Z. There are many other reasons, but that's one that's particularly close to my heart.
Excellent. Great answers from each of you. Thank you. We had another live question came through from Mohammed, and it is, what is the reliability and backup of the integrated system being used? So I might go with Carl for that one.
Sure. I'm not sure I can speak if it's to MTR specifically. I can't speak to all the other systems being used, but I can speak to our system. So our system is hosted on Amazon Web Services. It is backed up constantly. The reliability is 99.99%. The disaster recovery, I mean, it's Amazon, so the disaster recovery procedures are quite solid. If that's the question that you're asking, if it's for our specific software.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for that. I will take the opportunity. We had a couple of other questions. We are getting to the end of the session today, but we've just got a couple more questions that I was hoping to address that came through from registration. And you've already answered the question from Robert De Silva, Carl, so I won't ask that one again. But there was a question which came through from Pierre Francois, and his question was, at what stage in a project's life cycle should the data set for managing construction be defined?
So in my view, the earlier the better, but during the design phase is typically when it's done. When the bill of materials is locked, when schedules are being developed, typically if you can begin to do it during FEL 2 or at the latest in FEL 3, I think that's the best time to do it. And the reason is because it will then start to inform your contracting strategy as well. If you're starting to lock some of that data set down during the design phase, the end of the design phase, not the beginning when you're just doing feasibility studies and things. So yeah, I'd say that's the best time to get it done. And then you can refine it as you go, but you have to lock that initial baseline and then use that for informing your contract strategy to go forward.
Thanks for that, Carl.
Rob, you're a commercial guy, so there's nobody better on the call to answer that one than you.
I was just about to kind of, throw to you, Rob.
Well, I was actually going to sort of supplement what you said there, Carl, and about it evolving. The point is that you're always evolving it. You do apply change management to your data. Just because you set the data out in the beginning doesn't mean that it ceases to evolve from there. You've got to keep tight control of it. You don't want mismatching data across your different systems. You don't want piling called one thing in one system and then something else in another. It's going to mess you up. This data will continue to evolve, and you need to have good processes in place to make sure you control that. Throughout the life cycle is the short answer.
Thanks for that, Rob. Neil, we had a question which came in, and I'm hoping that you'd be able to assist with this one. It was, what is the average return on investment on railway projects?
Yes. So rail projects in Australia form two parts. There's the private sector, which is mainly from mines to ports that the mining operators use. And then there's the government funded sector. The government funded sector is really not just about return on investment, but also the initial contribution locally through increase in GDP. So these projects are designed as social infrastructure projects. They connect towns together, they form backbones, they form alternative routes. And therefore, when you're evaluating them, there's a variety of measures that you can use to evaluate their return. And in general, you're looking that return is positive. It actually is going to create opportunities. So, for example, if you start putting regional rail lines out to the regional cities, that also encourages migration of people. That in turn leads to them filling local jobs and the local population expanding, which creates additional jobs. So there's a whole plethora of measures you can use, not just the ROI, but in the private sector, an ROI is important. And that percentage will be dependent on the business that's putting forward the case and will pass its own internal criteria. So there's no ready rule of thumb, but you have to look at each project on its own standing, and also for some of the other projects, their contribution to the regional change that you expect and regional expansion.
Thanks for that, Neil. Look, what I might do is move to our final question for today, and I'm going to direct this to all of our panel members. And this question actually came through from Nicholas Gibson from Queensland. So a big hello and thank you to Nicholas for supplying this question. All of you bring deep experience in capital project delivery. How do you see the biggest challenges evolving for major infrastructure programs over the next 5 years? So I might start. I'm just going to go around the screen. So should we kick off with you, Carl?
Sure. There's a lot of ways you could answer that question. Some of them maybe more macro and obvious answers are just the size and complexity of these projects and the amount of budget that goes into them, and the coordination of so many contractors create tremendous challenges. Rob in his presentation talked about rail lines through major urban centers. Crossrail, which is where we met, was tunneling under London and making sure that we didn't topple any buildings in the process, or digging through Egyptian ruins and finding things like that need to be preserved. So that kind of thing, those will just get more complex and more complicated as the scale and ambition of these projects grow. But from a straight project controls lens, I think the answer is much more straightforward. It is that there just aren't enough controls people out there. The field, I think, is not as deep as it needs to be. And even with AI, for all the wonderful benefits it's going to have, it's some of the coolest evolution and transformation I think we're going to see in modern times. But for all its benefits, it still takes people to evaluate it and make sure it's right. It still is going to require that controls expertise to manage AI and all the systems and processes correctly. So I think one of the biggest challenges for us is in our industry is going to be there just aren't enough of us out there. And groups like this and Project Controls Expo and AAC and others that promote education around project controls, it's so important to participate with those organizations, because it's a great market, and we're going to need more people like you all on this call to get things done efficiently.
Definitely. And Rob?
Yeah, I think I have to echo that. We've talked a lot during this webinar about technical issues and solutions, things that we need to be doing. So mine's going to. I'm going to say about people. Excuse me, I just need to plug my laptop in. I'm going to talk about people. Ultimately, the biggest risk to our delivery is getting the right people. I've got so many vacancies for highly skilled individuals here that it's really difficult to find the right resources. Carl mentioned about applying AI. You need good people to understand how it works, understand what it's telling you as well, so you can make decisions. I think the major thing for me when it comes to people is just the fact that someone is knocking on my door almost every week saying, haven't I got the newest tool for you? Haven't I got the best AI solution for you? And at the moment, we're not in a position where we can apply all these different tool sets because we haven't got the right skills and organization there in the first place. We need to train and develop our people to be ready for an AI evolution. And I think, therefore, it comes as a bit of a saying that I heard the other day, actually, when I was at another conference, which is first comes the mindset, then comes the skill set, then comes the tool set. So that's where I see the pain point at the moment for organizations, for big projects, is getting hold of the highly skilled individuals we need and making sure they've got the right mindset, making sure they've got the right skill set, and then providing them with the tool set.
Definitely. Totally agree. And then, so Neil, what do you see are the biggest challenges evolving for major infrastructure programs over the next 5 years?
So fully support what both Carl and Rob have mentioned. In addition, I think the mindset of people has to also change, because if you go back 5 years, everything was a lot more cheaper. It was impacted then by COVID, inflation around the world. So there's been a reset in the cost base, and everything that previously cost $1 billion now costs $2 or $3 billion. So changing that mindset to accept that that's the cost, and therefore turning it around to what can we do for a fixed amount of money will also help people decide which projects offer the best value for money, the best bang for the buck, and which of those that you really do need to progress with, because you also know that they will take time to get any appropriate regulatory approvals. So factor that in. That's how I'd be looking at the next 5 years. There's a tremendous demand for projects around the world. It's constant. Alone in Australia, there's a 10-year pipeline of 120 billion Aussie dollars worth of projects. That's always been there, and it always will be there. So pick and choose which of the projects are going to give you the best value for money out of that project list.
Awesome. Thank you. Look, thank you all so much for your answers and the insight that you provided. And I have to say that's all the time that we have for today. So please join me in once again thanking Robert Stockwell, Carl Van Tyne and Neil Burleson for their time and input. I would also like to thank Engineers Australia's industry partner, Contruent, for their support. We would appreciate if you could take a moment to please complete the short feedback form, which is linked in the description box below. Your input, your feedback, it really does help us to improve and plan future sessions. So finally, thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Industry Partners event. Good afternoon.